Good evening, everybody. Welcome in. We're so glad to have you tonight. Thank you for harrowing our parking situation tonight. Go Bulldogs. It is their homecoming parade tonight, so thanks for making it to the library. And happy Banned Books Week Eve. We're not quite there yet, but starting Sunday, we're in Banned Books Week. My name is Jim Curry. I'm a youth and teen librarian here at the Fayetteville Public Library. I confess I read banned books, and I'd like to thank you for joining us in our celebration of Banned Books Week and our constitutional freedom to read. So thank you very much. Whoop! Yep, we love it. Here at FPL, we as librarians celebrate. We're proud to recognize Banned Books Week. And we're really happy to celebrate 4 years of the Banned Books Week project. This marks 4 years, so thank you very much for the continuation of this project. We have a fantastic collection that we're going to show to you tonight, and we're really proud with how cohesive this collection is tonight. So I think this is maybe our best yet. And we're really excited to share the pieces with you and to introduce the artist to you tonight as well. But first, our guest speaker tonight is Dr. Sean Connors. Dr. Connors is an associate professor of English education at the University of Arkansas. His scholarship and teaching focuses on comics and the application of diverse critical perspectives to young adult literature. He's the editor of the Politics of Panem, Challenging Genres, a collection of critical essays about the Hunger Games, and co-editor of Teaching Girls on Fire, Essays of Dystopian Young Adult Literature in the Classroom. We are so glad to have Dr. Connors back for the project this year. Please welcome Dr. Sean Connors.
Good evening. Good evening. Oh, come on. Good evening. There you go. Come on, if the book banning doesn't get your blood pressure up, I don't know what will. This is my third year doing this. I would have thought we'd address this problem by now, but I'm back. I had the chance recently to travel home to the village in upstate New York where I grew up. Outside of being the home, or the former home, of the original Remington Arms factory, it isn't all that inspiring. In a town that often seemed to treat its young people as an afterthought, there was very little for us to do growing up. But thanks to my mother, our local library became a lifeline for me. And I think we may have pictures. Jim, do we have those pictures? Okay. Let's see if we can pull those up. Okay, so let's see, here we go. Yeah, so here I am in front of the library. And this is a picture of me perusing the book collection in the children's reading room where I spent many hours as a child. As you can probably tell, our public library was rather small. I suspect you could probably fit it in Jim's office here in the Fayetteville Public Library. But the books that lined the shelves in the children's reading room and later in the adult section had a profound impact on me. Many of my classmates aspired to follow their parents into working on the assembly line at the Arms. But the books I read and the books my teachers and librarians recommended to me opened my eyes to possibilities that I wouldn't have imagined for myself otherwise. They allowed me to see life from the perspective of people whose backgrounds were very different from my own. They opened my eyes to a world beyond the small town where I lived and which often felt really constraining to me. They inspired me to be creative, and they instilled in me a longing to tell my stories. So it's probably not surprising that Phyllis Anderson, a kindly elderly librarian who surely must have had a terrific sense of humor, supported me when I approached her in my freshman year of high school and asked if I could perform an extravagant Space Odyssey themed puppet show that I'd written for children in the library's public meeting room. I think I brought a picture of that as well. So, yep, good, here we go. This is me with the cast during rehearsals out on my front porch. So yeah, I loved my public libraries as a young person. And if anything about it felt dangerous to me, it was only the threat my parents posed if they were to find out I'd racked up late fees. But as it turns out, I was mistaken. While I didn't realize it at the time, apparently, the real danger each time that I faced when I checked the book out from the library was the risk that I might learn something that broadened my worldview. Today in schools and libraries across the United States, books are quietly, and sometimes not so quietly, disappearing from bookshelves. And it's not because young people aren't reading them. It's because someone else is afraid they might. And what's at stake is far more than the loss of allegedly objectionable titles. What's at stake is the issue of who gets to tell stories. More than a decade ago, Sherman Alexie, the author of the award-winning novel, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian, which has itself been banned several times, published an essay in the Washington Post in which he responded to another columnist who had lamented what she characterized as a preponderance of dark content in books for teenagers. In his essay, Alexie argued, when some cultural critics fret about the ever more appalling YA books, they aren't trying to protect African American teens forced to walk through metal detectors on their way into school, or Mexican American teens enduring the culturally schizophrenic life of being American citizens and the children of illegal immigrants, or Native American teens growing up on third world reservations, or poor white kids trying to survive the meth haze trailer parks. They aren't trying to protect the poor from poverty or victims from rapists. No, they're simply trying to protect their own privileged notion of what literature is and should be, and they're trying to protect privileged children, or the seemingly privileged. His observation is no less pertinent today than it was in 2011. Having taught English at a suburban high school in New York State, and later at a charter high school on the Western Navajo Indian Reservation, and still later at a culturally and economically diverse high school in Flagstaff, Arizona, and as someone who today works with college students, I have to confess that I can't help but find irony in all of this, because I can tell you from experience that the very books that Alexie found himself in the position of having to defend, books about sexuality, books about gender identity, books about American history, are the same books that help many of the students I teach feel seen, feel understood, feel human. And maybe that's the real danger that censors fear, the possibility that these books could foster empathy for others. Let me share some numbers with you, because this story is much bigger than the headlines. 2 years ago in 2023, book bans soared 65%. Statistics from PEN America last year documented this increase as well. Between July 1st, 2023 and June 30th, 2024, the number of book bans rose from 3,362 to more than 10,000. The American Library Association, as reflected on the book display on the back table, recently published its list of the top 10 most frequently challenged and banned books in 2024. Please ignore my typo there. It's also worth noting that book banning is not an equal opportunity endeavor, as books for teenagers are far more likely to be targeted than any other demographic. As well, it's worth noting that censors targeted books that feature sex or sex-related content, characters or people of color, and LGBTQ plus characters or people of color. And I think that's important because it shows that book banning is an ideological project. I, for one, never would have expected that books meant to prepare young people to cope with death and loss or to navigate mental illness would be perceived as offensive. And I certainly would have thought that books that emphasize on the far right, books that emphasize empowerment and self-esteem would be perceived as dangerous. While these statistics are troubling, what they don't capture is the physical and mental and emotional toll that book banning has on teachers and librarians and school administrators and any other adults whose work entails their supporting young people's literacy. Some of these people have been subjected to verbal abuse, others to threats, and still others have lost their jobs. Having always thought of teaching as a noble profession, more and more I find myself wondering, when did teachers become the enemy within? When did librarians become seen as insurgents? if you happen to find yourself, and you may well be right now, if you happen to find yourself experiencing existential dread, I assure you that is not my intention tonight. Social media and the news outlets are more than happy to do that for you, and I'll leave them to their work. I'd rather offer you cause for optimism by sharing stories that you may not have heard. Stories about people, real everyday people, who rather than stay silent are instead resisting the banning of books in our schools and libraries. People like Summer Boismeyer, a high school English teacher in our neighbor to the west, Oklahoma, who after being told she could no longer provide, quote, controversial reading material to students, did something I think is courageous. She covered her classroom bookshelves in butcher paper and posted a QR code linking her students to the Brooklyn Public Library's Books Unbanned program. Adjacent to the QR code on the same butcher paper that separated her students from books, Summer had sought to make available to them, she wrote, books the state doesn't want you to read. She was subsequently placed on leave and later resigned under pressure, but she was also true to herself and her objectives as an educator. I didn't become a teacher to be a gatekeeper, Summer explained. I became a teacher to be a doorway. I love that. Cameron Samuels attended high school in a Texas school district that blocked access to LGBTQ websites and which began removing LGBTQ-themed books from school libraries. Rather than stay quiet, which arguably would have been a safer choice, Cameron chose to organize. They spoke at board meetings, built coalitions, and became the first ever youth honorary chair of Banned Books Week. Reflecting on their experience, Cameron said, I was once silenced. Now I use that silence as a microphone. Like Summer Boismeyer, Mary Wood, a teacher in South Carolina, also chose to be a teacher who opens rather than closes doors for students. She assigned Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates to students in her AP English class. And when the school district sought to stop her, citing a law against addressing divisive concepts, Mary fought back and managed to return Coates' book to her curriculum. And after Brookie Parks, a librarian in Colorado, lost her job for organizing teen programs that focused on anti-racism and LGBTQ topics, she filed discrimination claims and ultimately won a rather sizable settlement. These people aren't celebrities, and in a culture that fetishizes wealth and fame and power, their stories aren't widely known. But if they lack the financial support that enables our politicians and political action groups to foment culture wars, they and others like them are drawing a line. And in doing so, they're showing the rest of us that censorship is not just an abstract policy battle. It's lived every day by people who care deeply about education, young people, equity, and the civic imagination. When I hear people say they're not banning books, and as an educator, believe me, I hear that, they're protecting children, I can't help but wonder, from what exactly? From other children who happen to have two moms? From the knowledge that racism persists in American society and will continue to persist until we're finally willing to acknowledge and address it once and for all? Because when we ban books, we aren't removing a dangerous threat to young readers. We're depriving them of an opportunity to encounter complexity, contradiction, and discomfort, all of which are necessary conditions for their intellectual and personal development. And let me be clear in saying, I don't believe every book is right for every reader. As evidence of that, I was reminded of that when I recently made the mistake of reading Stephen King's It late into the night and subsequently spent the next 6 hours awake in the dark, peering out from beneath my blanket, lest a deranged clown find his way into my bedroom. You're laughing, but it really happened. So yeah, I can agree not every book's right for every reader. But that's why we have teachers and librarians, and most of all, parents who can make those decisions for their own children. What we don't need are political operatives masquerading as grassroots moms and taking it upon themselves to determine what's appropriate for everyone else. Because if we ban every book that makes someone uncomfortable, we're going to discover one day that all we're left with are coloring books and cookbooks, And I predict someone will challenge them. Can't you just hear it now? Like, this recipe calls for almond milk. This is the West Coast elites, right? There's an inconvenient truth that book censors desperately want to obscure. Books don't corrupt, they empower. They teach us to feel, to ponder, to disagree, to hope. Banning books doesn't shield children from harm. What it does is whisper, your story doesn't matter. Your ideas are too dangerous. Your identity is too controversial. Fortunately, this isn't over. Across the country, resistance to book banning is growing. In Texas and other states, high school students are forming banned book clubs. In Pennsylvania, 2 years ago, students held daily protests outside their high school until administrators reversed their decision to ban nearly 300 books, films, and articles. Still, other communities are organizing read-ins. And here in Fayetteville, Arkansas, your own public library is celebrating artists whose work was selected as winners of the 4th annual art competition, meant to call attention to the persistent threat that book banning poses to all of our constitutional right to read. So, what can we do? We can support teachers, not just with words, but with action, by showing up at school board meetings, by voting in local elections, and speaking back to censorship masquerading as morality. We can donate banned books to local organizations that serve our young people and ensure they have access to books that represent their lives with honesty and compassion. We can vote like our freedoms depend on it, because more and more they do. And we can set aside time to read books that others want to suppress, because at the end of the day, book banning won't erase the truth. If anything, it's only going to cause that truth to burn brighter. Regrettably, there will always be people, history shows us, who strive to silence other stories. But as the examples I've shared tonight hopefully demonstrate, there will also be others who resist. And that gives me hope, because the whole point of resistance is to disrupt the mechanisms of power. Authoritarians know that, and that's why they try to intimidate and bully their adversaries. Their goal is to enact their agenda with as little resistance as possible, and when people stand up and they speak out, it makes that job that much harder for them. So I encourage you, consider joining the resistance. If you haven't already done so, consider reading one of the banned books that our award-winning artists have chosen to spotlight in their work. Or consider submitting your own work for next year's art competition. Talk about banned books with other people. Insert yourself in conversations that are characterized by misinformation, or even worse, disinformation, and lend your voice or your art to the chorus of others who are seeking to protect our right to read. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Connors. Okay. Inspired by the Chapel Hill Public Library in North Carolina, the Banned Books Artist Project was introduced to Fayetteville Public Library in 2022. A call for community artists was put out this summer for 2D interpretations of books or authors that have been banned or challenged in the United States. We're so grateful for the response that we received this year from the artist community of Northwest Arkansas. We had a record number of submissions this year, so this project is trending up, and I love to see it. We also had a record number of physical submissions, so thank you for digital submissions, and thank you for physical submissions, too. It was really cool to have it in my hands this year, too. A selection committee of librarians, library staff, and the Fayetteville Public Library Art Committee was formed, and we painstakingly selected the 5 winning pieces. To narrow it down to 5 is always a challenge. These works will hang in our library through the end of the year, and they've been printed as trading cards, which you can pick up on the back table at the end of the program. And here are Chapel Hill Public Library cards, not our cards. This year's national theme is Censorship is So 1984, a nod to the Orwell novel. ALA President Cindy Hull writes, "The 2025 theme of Banned Books Week serves as a reminder that censorship efforts persist to this day. We must always come together to stand up for the right to read." George Orwell's cautionary tale 1984 serves as prescient warning about the dangers of censorship. This year's theme reminds us that the right to read belongs to all of us, and censorship has no place in contemporary society, and that we must defend our rights. It's great to see that the artist community feels the same. And so, if you're ready, are you ready? Let's get into it. How to Eat Fried Worms. How to Eat Fried Worms by Thomas Rockwell was first published in 1973. The novel follows the story of Billy, who must eat 15 worms in 15 days if he wants to win $50. I think that rate would go up in 2025. It received a film adaptation in 2006, and the work has received challenges over the decades for its promotion of children bedding, as well as antisocial behavior, children eating worms. From our first winning artist, obscured through censorship, the book's title and the cause for the featured character's expression can be misconstrued. The redacted text blindfolds young readers, limiting their ability to explore. When information is withheld, context is lost, and assumptions may be worse than what was originally intended by the author. He is no stranger to this project. Please join me in congratulating our first winning artist and their celebration of How to Eat Fried Worms, Bryson Taylor.
Hello, everyone. The author of How to Eat Fried Worms, Thomas Rockwell, died last year at the age of 91. If his name sounds familiar, it's because he was the son of the legendary artist Norman Rockwell, and both shared themes of slice of life and small-town experiences in the United States. While pitching his book, he was rejected by 23 different publishers. Even back then, it was deemed too gross. That sentiment was echoed when the book joined the ranks of the other 99 on the list of 100 most challenged books of the 1990s. The book has sold over 3 million copies since publication in 1973 and has never been out of print despite its multiple bannings. I was surprised to learn that the book has 2 sequels, How to Fight a Girl, and How to Get Fabulously Rich. How to Fight a Girl, to my knowledge, is not a banned book and is yet so much more concerning than eating fried worms. Each year, I pick out a book to read for this contest, and you'd think I'd be surprised. You think I would be less and less surprised by what ends up on the banned list. However, I've yet to find a book that doesn't leave me confused, with How to Eat Fried Worms being the latest to baffle me. The book has been banned for allegedly encouraging children to gamble and adopt antisocial behavior. Many challenged books build up a false reputation for being inaccurately censored for what actually lies within their pages. I wanted to reflect this in my design by censoring part of the title, leaving its nature and meaning to be left up for debate like so many books are when they are challenged. Recently, I attended a lecture where an author was speaking who has had their works challenged multiple times. During the Q&A session, the author was asked, "How do you engage and converse with those who don't share the same view on protecting readers' rights as you do?" The author replied, I don't talk or engage with people like that anymore who can't understand that, and I don't have time." I can only imagine how it feels to have your own books challenged and banned. I'm sure the author is understandably upset, sad, and frankly just tired. And I get it, but I respectfully and strongly disagree. Now more than ever, like Dr. Connors mentioned, we need to reach across the aisle and find common ground. I don't believe understanding has an expiration date. Our conversation isn't over, and the time for asking questions and listening to others is still here. That's why we're all here. We have the responsibility to protect our rights and the rights of others to be creative. Share the books you like with others. Help them understand what made you laugh, what made you cry. Ask what their favorite book is. Chances are it has also been challenged at one point or another, and they may not even know it. Have these conversations with others. We need them now more than ever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bryson. Moving right along. Ernest Hemingway. His first novel was The Sun Also Rises, first published in 1926. The novel follows characters through Parisian nightlife and the bullfighting festivals of Pamplona. Hemingway's protagonists face the psychological scarring and the search for meaning in life after war. Because the novel denounces violence and war, it was burned by Nazis in the 1930s. Additional challenges to the work were seen in the 1960s for the novel for its language. Hemingway's own mother referred to the work as one of the filthiest novels of the year. The medium our second artist used in their submission was new to the project. Our artist writes, "To depict Hemingway's novel, I used shigiri-e, the ancient Japanese art form of layering torn pieces of paper in their natural textures to create images. I learned this medium in a class at the Fayetteville Public Library, where I enjoy reading banned books and broadening my cultural landscape. We love that our programming helped inspire this artist. For their celebration of The Sun Also Rises, please welcome winning artist Robin Rector."
Good evening. I've had a deep love for the library ever since I was a little child, checking books out every other week. My mom would take me on Saturdays and sit in the car for quite a while I browsed and brought home a big stack. People would ask her if I really read that many books, and I did. I am who I am because of public libraries and because of reading. Although my big sister, who's here tonight, thinks she deserves most of the credit for my good qualities. When I was in junior high in the 80s, it was the first time that T-shirt slogans and buttons were big like they are now. I liked one that said, "Dare to be different," and I took upon myself to go around quoting Voltaire. "I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to death your right to say it." That was my mantra for many years, and still is, until I recently found out that it wasn't Voltaire who said that, but his biographer, Evelyn Beatrice Hall, who wrote it in 1906 to summarize his views on freedom of speech. Nevertheless, the sentiment was my North Star in many situations over the years. When I moved to this area 3 years ago, I became a frequent patron of this wonderful library, and I marveled at all the great programs it had. I first came across banned books and the trading cards event and thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen at a library. The next 2 years, I came as a attendee, and then last year I came as a volunteer. I never thought that I would someday be able to be an artist in this event because, as you might see, my art lacks a bit of sophistication. When I started looking at what book to do, I'm going to be honest, I chose The Sun Also Rises because I thought I could draw a sun. When I finished the project, I sent it to my friend, or a picture of it, who is a very good artist, and she paused and said, "Well, it has a certain elementary school charm." I think we were both surprised when it was actually picked, and I appreciate the library for going out on a limb and letting my work stand. The teacher in me would be remiss not to point out a few facts about The Sun Also Rises. As it was said, it was written in 1926. It was first banned in Boston in 1930 for language and sexual content. It was burned by Nazis in Germany for depicting the war too realistically, and in California in the 60s for language and sexuality, if you can believe that, in California. Today, the American Library Association calls it a persistently challenged classic for reasons such as sex, violence, and its pessimistic worldview. If we can't talk about the realities of life, how can we deal with its tribulations? or celebrate its successes. Furthermore, if one voice can be banned, then any voice can be banned, or all voices can be banned. We must not let these holes in our freedom grow unchecked. As a reader, writer, journalist, and writing teacher, I care deeply for the free exchange of ideas for all people in all societies, whether I agree with them or not. Thank you, Fayetteville Library, for giving me a chance to stand with the band and for giving kids like me the foundation of endless words and ideas, and adults like me the chance to read whatever we want and to continue learning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin. And I shared this with her prior to the event start, but our selection committee, my manager had a quote when we reviewed this one saying that it inspires her that she could submit to this project as well. So when we call Robin a winning artist, we mean it. Excuse me, there's your name up there too, sorry. Little picture, yeah. Okay. One of the most celebrated writers of the 20th century, Ray Bradbury, was a master of dystopian, sci-fi, and other genres. It's arguable that his best-known work is his 1953 novel revolving entirely around censorship. Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 is set in a future in which books are illegal and firemen's response is to burn them when they find them. It's a grim warning of the type of world we could have should censorship overthrow our constitutional rights. Ironically, in addition to some of the book's content, the book's opposition to censorship and government control became a primary reason for its being challenged. The subject of our third winning work, Our Artist Writes. Fahrenheit 451 is a forward-thinking classic that still has lessons for today's readers when it comes to the dangers of the suppression of ideas and the withering of independent thought. I wanted to depict the resilience of ideas and the liberation they can bring, even in the face of intentional destruction. The folded birds, decked in snippets of text from Fahrenheit 451 itself, escape the sort of book burning that Ray Bradbury describes in the novel. For their celebration of Fahrenheit 451, please join me in congratulating winning artist Alyssa May. Yeah, I'll get you in a minute. Yeah, one more time for Alyssa. Thank you. Thank you very much, Alyssa. We are happy to share your talents. Thank you. Our penultimate book, banned book, is Elena K. Arnold's fantasy novel, Damsel. And it turns the classic fairy tale trope on its head. Prince defeats a dragon. Princess has no recollection of being in danger or of being saved, but is suddenly forced to marry the prince. I won't spoil it for you, but everything is not as it seems. The 2017 novel saw a ban from South Carolina as recently as November of 2024 for being sexually explicit. Elena K. Arnold came back and said, she argued these descriptions, she says that she includes portrayals of sexual assault and physical abuse because it's crucial for providing knowledge and protecting young people. But critics have misconstrued them as pornography. Our local artist states, Damsel is the strengthened voice speaking out against widespread misogyny, giving life to an often silenced experience. Having read the novel and watched the cinematic interpretation, it led me to create a piece that represents both the uniqueness of story and my personal style. This piece reflects my admiration for the bold voice Elodie carries throughout such a beautifully empowering story. We love it when our library teens get involved with this project. For their celebration of Damsel, please join me in congratulating winning artist Addison Grove. And that's for you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Addison Grove and I am a woman. From a young age, I connected with the words on pages. Like any other achingly adventurous girl, I found myself attempting to peer beyond Cinderella's glass slipper and Aurora's eternal sleep. Today, I stand here proud to speak about the book that took the man out of woman. I am my own person as well as everyone here today. Damsel was written by a woman for women who once beckoned the same question: who am I if not belonging to someone else? A girl is taken for not only a body but less than. She is taken for a sacrifice. Our character that speaks in this art today chose to lead herself away from the traditional meaning, away from such a painstaking ritual. In fact, our society has silenced this book for that very reason, but her voice is quiet for those who yell, fight, and lead a more than fictional war. We exist across the cover, past the pages, beyond the chapters. And our story does not end here. Damsel stands tall in this iconic library as more than its title. I would like to see each and every survivor of the silence stand taller. Stand with she who raises the brave sword. I've created over 200 works of art, each one with a bit of me, a bit of woman. I chose this book to represent my personal style, the gloriously angering truth that I will continue to craft with the statistics spread across our headlines. I can only hope to do Eleanor Arnold this justice, grant her as much of a voice as all of ours, with a fine and coarse representation of the fractured society, standing against over half of the people in this room. It is a lie, she wrote. There is no prince coming to save you. I urge you to save yourself and be an inspiration to those whose voices we've lost in the fight. Thank you for everyone, and a big thank you to the staff of Fayetteville Public Library.
Thank you, Addie. Our final submission exemplifies that it's not just 20th and 21st century texts that get challenged. Almanzor was published in the 1820s by German author Heinrich Heine. Set in Granada during the Catholic takeover of Spain, the play's protagonist is forcibly converted from Islam to Christianity and features a scene in which the Quran is burned. In Nazi Germany, Heine's work was among the first that were targeted for burning due to both Heine's Jewish heritage and his political viewpoints. Our final winning artist writes, "It is in Almanzor that Heine writes his most famous line, 'When they burn books, they will also in the end burn people.'" Almanzor was set in Granada, Spain, represented by the Alhambra, excuse my pronunciation, in the background. In Almanzor, the Christian persecution of the Moors included book burning and forced conversion. The book burning, displaying Heine's famous line, also represents the suppression of Heine's ideas in his own time and during the Nazi era. He is our first staff member at the Fayetteville Public Library to submit a winning piece to the project. Please join me in congratulating winning artist Jonathan Zhang.
In this illustration, I wanted to celebrate the most important quote about censorship that I have ever encountered. And the quote is, "Where they burn books, they will also in the end burn people." And the quote comes from a play called Almanzor, as Jim mentioned, written in 1820 by a 23-year-old German Jewish writer, Heinrich Heine, who at that time became one of the greatest celebrities in the 19th century in Europe for writing, and was known for love poetry, actually, but is now most known for this quote. And he was disturbed during his time because he kind of witnessed the 300th anniversary of the Protestant Reformation, and in Germany at that time, a lot of college students, university students went around and started burning books and making anti-Semitic speeches and decrying foreigners, which sounds kind of familiar. So he saw that in his own lifetime, and so he decided to write a story set in 16th century Granada, Spain, which I've represented through the Alhambra in the background, that famous palace. And so the story was an allusion to his own time, but I feel like it proves to be an illusion for all time. In the 16th century, the Christians had already reconquered all of Spain and persecuted the defeated Moorish population with book burnings and forced conversion through torture. And that is when Heine concludes that scene with this famous quote. And I think this book burning illustration helps depict the scene, but I also think I also used it to represent the suppression of Heine's own ideas during his own life, and also especially during the Nazi era. And in 1933, the year Hitler seized power, 50,000 books were burned in Berlin, including Heine's own works. So whether it's 16th century Spain or 1930s Germany, I feel like the story is similar. History tells us again and again that censorship is a precursor to violence and persecution. They go hand in hand. And so today, in 2025 in America, I feel that Heinrich Heine's quote is more relevant than ever. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you to all of our artists. If we could give all of our winning artists one more big round of applause, please. Thank you. We are thrilled to recognize these 5 artists this year and these works in this year's Banned Books Week. Again, Banned Books Week will start Sunday officially. Censorship is so 1984, Sunday to Saturday, so feel free to check out a banned book next week or tonight. We've got some on the back table back there. We also have some refreshments back there for you all, and we will have this year's trading card packs. Ms. Renee is putting them out right now, so be sure to grab a pack of trading cards before you go tonight. We've also got last year's on the table as well. Coming soon. We don't have them tonight, but coming soon, you can view all of the, actually tonight, you could view all of the previous project winners on our 3rd floor media gallery. Coming soon to our media gallery will be this year's winners as big posters. So come back probably by tomorrow or Friday, and we may have them up on the Friday. Let's go with Friday. And we should have them up on the wall very soon. So I want to wish you all a very, very happy Banned Books Week. And again, I think the most important thing that we can do is just raise awareness. So thank you for having this conversation, because we're not going to get anything done if we don't talk about it. So happy Banned Books Week, and may you always celebrate your freedom to read. Thank you for coming tonight. If we could get all the winning artists to join us on stage, we would love to get a group photo as well, please, if you are comfortable with that. And Robin, I have your thing up here. And Alyssa, yes. Hey.